The morning light crept through the trees. It painted long shadows across the clearing. Birds chirped. A gentle breeze rustled the leaves. But the peacefulness couldn't shake the feeling of dread that hung over the campsite. The four friends, huddled around the cold ashes of last night's fire, shivered in the morning air. Max, the oldest, rubbed his eyes and yawned. He looked around the campsite, his gaze stopped at the empty space between him and his friends.
"Where's the backpack?" he asked, his voice raspy with sleep.
The backpack, their only source of food and supplies, was gone, vanished. The friends stared at each other, their faces a mixture of confusion and fear.
"This isn't funny, guys," Emily said, her voice trembling slightly. "Very funny, guys. Now where is it?"
But no one laughed. No one spoke. The weight of their predicament pressed down on them. They were alone, deep in Whispering Pines forest. And now their supplies were gone. They searched frantically, their hearts pounding in their chests.
"We have to find it," said Jake, his face pale. "We need that food."
"Let's split up," Chloe suggested, her voice unusually calm. "We can cover more ground that way."
The friends hesitated for a moment, each dreading the thought of being alone in the silent woods, but they knew they had no choice. They needed to find the backpack. One by one, they walked away from the campsite and into the dense undergrowth. Max walked with a growing sense of unease. The forest seemed to press in on him, the silence broken only by the sound of his own footsteps. He scanned the ground, searching for any sign of the missing backpack. He called out for his friends, but his voice was swallowed by the trees.
As Emily pushed through a thicket of ferns, she thought she heard something. A faint whisper carried on the wind. It seemed to come from deep within the woods. She stopped, listening intently. The sound came again, closer this time. It was definitely a whisper, but she couldn't make out the words. Fear sent a shiver down her spine. She quickened her pace, wanting nothing more than to find her friends and escape the unnerving forest. But the whispers seemed to follow her, growing louder with every step.
Jake stumbled upon a clearing drawn by a strange pull he couldn't explain.
In the center stood a massive oak tree, its branches reaching towards the sky like gnarled fingers.
The trunk was wider than any tree he had ever seen, its bark dark and ancient. As he approached, he noticed strange carvings etched into the bark. The carvings were crude, almost primitive, but they were undeniably faces.
Faces twisted into expressions of fear and agony.
Jake reached out to touch one of the faces, and as he did, he felt a cold shiver run through his body. Chloe, meanwhile, found herself walking in circles. The trees seemed to shift and move around her, the paths twisting and turning back on themselves.
She knew this forest was vast, but she hadn't expected to be so utterly lost. Panic welled up inside her.
She called out for her friends, but her voice was met with silence. The forest seemed to be closing in, trapping her in its shadowy embrace. She was alone, lost, and utterly terrified. As the friends searched, the whispers grew louder, swirling around them like a malevolent wind. The forest seemed to pulse with an unseen energy, a force that was both ancient and terrifying. They realized they were in grave danger.
But they also knew they had to stick together if they were going to survive.
They found their way back to the clearing, drawn by the strange pull of the ancient oak.
As they stood beneath its imposing branches, they shared the unsettling experiences they had encountered.
Fear hung heavy in the air, but so did a growing sense of determination.
They would face this together. The sun began its slow descent, casting long shadows across the clearing. The whispers grew more insistent, the faces carved into the ancient oak, seeming to watch their every move. They knew they couldn't stay here, not with night approaching.
"We need to get out of here,"
Max said, his voice tight with worry.
"But we can't just run blindly through the woods."
Emily agreed.
"He's right. We need a plan."
Chloe stepped forward, her eyes fixed on the carvings in the oak tree.
"What if these carvings are a clue? Maybe they're trying to tell us something."
They studied the carvings, trying to decipher their meaning. The faces were grotesque, but there was a strange familiarity to them. And then, Jake noticed it.
"Look, I've seen that before."
Jake racked his brain, trying to remember where he had seen the symbol. It was vaguely familiar, like something he had glimpsed in a book or a dream. And then it hit him. He had seen it in his grandfather's journal, a journal filled with tales of the supernatural and the unexplained.
It's a protective sigil. My grandfather wrote about them. He said they were used by ancient cultures to ward off evil spirits.
A plan began to form in Max's mind. If they could find more of these symbols, maybe they could use them to protect themselves and find their way out of the forest. It was a long shot, but it was their only hope. With renewed determination, the friends set off into the deepening twilight, following the strange pull that led them deeper into the heart of Whispering Pines. They knew the forest held many dangers, but they were no longer afraid. They had each other, and they had a plan. They would uncover the forest's secrets and find their way back to safety. And they would not rest until they found their missing supplies. The fate of their very lives depended on it.